Hello and welcome to this edition of Naturally Scott. I'm your host, Scott Harris, and I'm delighted to have a friend and innkeeper on today, Keith Hackland of Alamo Inn Bed and Breakfast. They also Gears and Tours are in the title. Keith and his wife own and run this beautiful spot filled with private suites and great attitudes and friendly people. They are located in southwestern Texas, Rio Grande Valley, perhaps the richest birding area in the country. And the entire focus of this place is on birds and birders. And having stayed there a number of times and developed a friendship with Keith, I can tell you it is a spectacular place to go. There are so many birds to see down there. Migratory birds coming through, the resident birds, the spring, the winter, the whole thing. It's just gorgeous. And you will learn all about it today, about the birds and about the inn. No doubt about it, man. I want you to know about this inn. I think it's special. You may have heard of the inn if you've seen the Netflix documentary Birders. Alamo Inn was highlighted in that, and justifiably so. They opened back in 1999. His wife moved here from Africa and established a life in Alamo, Texas, and have grown into being enthusiastic and supportive birders. And I think you're really going to enjoy meeting Keith, learning about the birding down in the Rio Grande Valley if you have not already, prompting you to watch the Netflix documentary Birders, which is not just about the Alamo Inn. It's a pretty cool documentary. And you'll get to know Keith. So have a great time, enjoy, and as always, man, thanks for checking in and stay curious. Hello and welcome to this edition of Naturally Scott. I'm your host, Scott Harris, and I'm honored today to have a man that has become a friend, Keith Hackland. And Keith is going to make a terrific guest. And first of all, I love his title from the first time. He's an innkeeper. I love knowing an innkeeper. I think that's very cool. But Keith runs the Alamo Inn Bed and Breakfast, Gear and Tours. It's kind of a long title. It's extremely well known to birders. And we're going to talk about that and Keith and Southeast Texas and just have a good old time here. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott.
Well,
I want to say I've listened to every one of your podcasts that's been posted. They are amazing.
Well, you are very kind, and let's hope this continues that. I'd like to think you're part of a growing number of people that listens to a lot of the podcasts, but I am flattered that you do and that you share it with your guests there at the Alamo.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the Alamo in depth, but first let's talk a little bit about Southeast Texas. That is perhaps the richest birding area in the country. I imagine there are a couple spots, Arizona or Florida or California, that would want to argue, but I think overall it probably is, right?
Southeast is pretty rich. We're actually in Southwest.
I apologize. Southwest. I'm sorry.
If you follow the Gulf Coast along to the Mexican border and the Rio Grande River, that's where we're located. And we're more west than east, but we're really in a unique situation geographically because we get birds primarily from eastern U.S., but also from the west. We get migrants, we get vagrants, we get birds coming from the south up here to spend the summer. We get a lot of wintering birds. About 70% of the regular breeding birds in the U.S. interact with the Texas Gulf Coast, and we're no exception to that. We get a lot of wintering birds, and then the migrants all pass through here on their way to Central South America. They pass right over us, the land migrants, and the Gulf migrants that fly at night often stop for a break, and they also pass right over us. So it's an amazing part of the country. 560 species. Texas has 675 species. It's number one for terrestrial birds in the U.S. And then the lower Rio Grande Valley is the richest part of Texas.
That is spectacular. Now, among those 560 birds, Keith, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, it's a bird I'm looking at any given moment. But the ones that one of the birds that's incredibly impressive down here is the green jay. It's an unforgettable bird. Its colors are dynamic. It's a typical jay in behavior almost, and they're pretty common.
I was my first time I was a guest at your inn was also the first time I saw a green jay, and I was just stunned. I was absolutely stunned. Although I did find myself wondering if green jays were scattered around the country in the way that, so many of the blue jays are, or the blue colored jays, the stellars and everybody else. I
Yeah.
wonder, and then if the blue jays were that tiny little spot like they are in Texas, I wonder if they would be considered just as spectacular. If
Probably,
they're
probably,
they're both such amazing birds.
yeah, yeah.
And if you haven't seen a green jay, you know what? I'll throw a picture of one up here now. I've got a couple of them from my trips down with Keith. I'll throw some up if you're watching on YouTube. But the color, it just looks like something out of Disney, like somebody just created it, that it wasn't real. A lot like the roseate spoonbill behind you there in that picture.
Yeah,
If you
right.
don't know that's a real bird, you're not going to believe that it is.
Yeah,
Which I think is true of so many birds. So
it is. It is. When you start looking at birds, they're truly amazing.
now you mentioned that you get migration in both directions, and you have a steady number of permanent birds there. So, what are there times of the year that are better to come down and visit and see these,
You
or
know,
any?
for the first visit to this area, I always recommend coming in the winter. The birds, the wintering birds are here. The local resident birds are here, and they're all coming to feeders if they're grain eaters, and there's raptors everywhere. It's an easy time to bird. It's reasonably cool. We're a tropical desert here, or semi-desert, so the summers get quite warm and the summers are pretty long, but the winters from November, December through into March. And then the next time that's good is spring migration. People who visit the valley get addicted to coming back. We did a survey some years ago at the local RGV birding festival, and the average number of times that responders came to the valley, they reported as 15. And that's not unusual. 15,
I'm not.
20 times. People just keep coming back.
Well, I've
Every
not been 15, but I've been half that many. And I will tell
Wow.
you that there hasn't been, and all of them spent with you, by the way. But
Yeah.
there has not been a disappointing trip yet. It seems like you go back and maybe see some old familiar friends, both human and bird, and you've got your favorite spots that
Yeah.
you go to, and it's this particular feeder's been great for green jays, or whatever it might be. But then you do seem to get a large number of rarities and migrants and some oddities that just compel you to come back and find them.
Yeah, yeah. I believe it's the number one area in the country for rarities and birds that are vagrants that are out of their normal area. There's always vagrants and rarities and uncommon birds showing up, and often they're the first. The numbers keep getting driven. When I moved here 28 years ago, I think our number was in the 400s, and now we're at in the 560s of species that are recognized by the very conservative Texas uh, Bird Records Committee. They're not easily persuaded that a species got here under its own volition. They very suspect. Maybe it came in a cage, maybe it rode on a ship or in a car or something, and they have to be persuaded. So um, California is number one in the country for birds, and that's because of all its pelagic birds, and it's also got a more liberal bird records committee. The one in Texas is pretty hard to persuade.
Well, there
The
you.
the
How is it you persuade them that a bird did not come by shipping container or car? I mean,
They make up their own minds, and the cattle egret is ubiquitous down here now, but it came from Africa by way of Brazil and worked its way up here. I think it got here under its own volition, with a bit of a help maybe from a storm across the Atlantic. And it's recognized. House sparrows are recognized. Starlings are recognized. So there's a lot of factors. One is when the birds have a breeding population, it's hard to deny them, even if they are exotic. So we've got some of the exotic birds that have been established here. One of them is a bronze manakin. It's in Houston. One of my favorite birds from Africa. I grew up around them, and so they look at a whole lot of factors. So when a bird shows up, they examine the feathers to see if it's been kept in a cage, and caged birds do escape. And birds are fairly popular still as caged pets, and a lot of parrots species got here that way. But we have native parrots, but the species that have been come in a cage are pretty obvious. They don't breed real well. They got in small numbers. The Records Committee has a tough job, and they do it well.
Well, good for them and good for you. I know as a raptor guy, I came down and got the Bat Falcon and the roadside hawk, which were, I mean, I'd seen them both in Central America a number of times, but something about seeing them in Texas made it seem, or seeing one in Texas, made it seem that much more special.
Yeah, the Bat Falcon was enormously popular. People just poured in. We were full. We had no space for anyone because people were just coming out of the woodwork and finding any way to get down here, driving and flying, and just to see the Bat Falcon. And it was here for a few months. It was very, very popular.
And then go ahead.
Somehow that Bat Falcon just caught people's imagination. There's plenty of rarities like that, but that one just caught the imagination of birders.
And it's funny, once it does, I mean, I went a couple of times, and, there was that spot right in front of the park where it was hanging out, and, there are 50, 60, 70 birders lined up with, it looked like a concert.
Yes.
Lined up across the street waiting for it.
Yeah.
And, any idea what happened to it?
I think it just moved on.
Just moved on.
I believe birds are programmed to push the boundaries, the geographic boundaries of where they live, and it's part of a survival instinct, and the young birds do that typically, but sometimes older ones do. But typically, it's the birds prior to breeding that push the boundaries and show up in unusual places.
Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about the Alamo Inn a little bit. Now, I'm going to share a touch of my experience. My son, who you met last time we were down there, we had lunch with Audrey, and it was just a spectacular time. Thank you. But it was my son, when I first got into birding, that had watched the Netflix documentary called Birders. And that's what introduced me to your inn. And we're going to talk about that documentary a little bit. Obviously, it's had an impact on what you do, or at least the number of people that know what you do. But for those who haven't been to the Alamo Inn, first of all, Keith, as an innkeeper, is a great title. He's such a gracious, gracious host. And the focus is on birders. They've got a store there for birders. They've got gear for birders. He's got an ongoing chart showing what birds have been seen in the last couple of days. He answers your questions. He introduces you to local guides. It's an all-in-one birding spot. Keith, would you say the vast majority of your guests are bird enthusiasts?
Yeah, they are. They are.
Okay.
We go out of our way to to always consider what birders are looking for, how we can make their stay better, and that's how we generate our services, and that's how we've grown. We started off with 4 suites, and we've got 22 now.
Well, and I can tell you, having stayed in a number of them, they are fantastic, and I enjoy it. 20, that's fantastic. And a number of times I have called and you've been booked. Congratulations to you. My idea for a policy, which is always to keep one room open for me, doesn't seem to have taken hold, but I'm always happy when a small businessman makes it. Now, you opened back in 1999, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was it a birding facility? What was it in 1998?
In 1998, we purchased an old rundown building that had apartments in it and was probably doomed to being pulled down to demolition at some point. It was going downhill, but we liked the look of the building. We rented some space in it for my wife's business, and the owner of the building came to us and said, "Listen, you've got to buy this building." And we said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, my plans for it didn't work out, and it's probably going to end up Section 8 housing, and that's the last stop on the road to demolition." And it's true, a lot of historic buildings down here have been have gone through demolition. This was built in 1919, and it was the first building on the square in the town of Alamo. We call it a city now, but it's a small town, and we just liked the look of it and thought we could do something with it. And it took us a year to really restore the building. You think about restoration, and a lot of people know what that means, but not everyone. And we had a lot of great deal of trouble finding anyone who wanted to restore it. They want everyone, all the construction guys wanted to remove all the interior and rebuild it. Well, that wasn't our idea. So quite a lot of the work we did ourselves, and then we'd get individuals to do specific tasks, and that was how we got the restoration done. And we've completed 4 suites at the beginning, and at that point, I really had to figure out who is going to stay here, and we thought of it as a B&B concept with breakfast, but we didn't know who was going to stay here. And I did some research on B&Bs, and there were a few around, but they come and go. It's not like the Texas Hill Country that's full of them and they're very successful. Down here in the valley, they don't survive. And we had to figure out who comes to the valley regularly, who needs accommodation, who can we work with. And my thoughts turned to birders. I like birders. They're amazing people. One of the best parts of being an innkeeper for birders is meeting the birders and talking to them, discovering how great they are and what they're doing and what they're seeing.
Now,
So
were you a birder 25 years ago when you started this?
probably not. I was an outdoor conservationist. I probably had more interest in botany than in birding, but I became a birder.
No, it was a good business move, by the way, and hopefully it's added a lot of value to your personal life.
Yeah, it really has. It was an essential business move, but it made my life a lot richer.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, what was the building when it was built in 1919? Do you have that historical information?
Yes, it was an office building.
Okay.
So the
Okay.
first doctor had an office upstairs. The land sales company had an office up there. There was a bank down on the first floor, which later became a drugstore. And then there were various people who had offices. In the 1940s, a man from Kansas City moved down here. He bought the building and he made some important changes to it. The upstairs offices he converted into apartments. It was post-war when he was doing the conversion, and everyone was looking for accommodation, somewhere to live. There were people returning from Europe, needed places to live, and he made them into apartments, and that was good for us because we simply restored those apartments, and they're pretty much intact. A lot of the 1940s features of the apartments are still there, like the little telephone shelf where the phone would go, and a folding down um, ironing board, things like that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, what about the suites across the street that are independent of the main building? When did those
Yeah.
come? Yeah.
Well, we started growing by word of mouth, and we were growing very rapidly. And some friends of ours had built some apartments also on the square. The only other accommodation on the square was these apartments, and they wanted to sell them. And we realized that we wouldn't have another opportunity either to increase our size or our footprint, and or to buy them. So we bought them really before we needed to, and we moved in and lived there for 15, 17 years.
Oh,
And some of the apartments were rented out, and the tenants kept on living there. But gradually over time, we continued growing, and we needed all of them for the inn. So we kicked ourselves out and a couple of staff who were living there, and the last of the tenants. And it became part of the hotel. Again, those suites, they're apartment suites, and we didn't change them. We just upgraded them, furnished them, stocked the kitchens with whatever kitchens need. And we started feeding the birds in the back. We've grown a lot of native plants there and changed the grounds, the feel of the grounds, and made them bird friendly. So
well,
they're
that's
about 100-yard walk from the other historic building, and they're an important part of the facility.
well, like a lot of birds, I'm a creature of habit, and the first time I was fortunate enough to be a guest of yours, I stayed there across the square, and so now that's where I always stay. As a matter of fact, I always take the same unit if I can. That first one up on the right-hand side. I just love it. I love access to the back. I go sit out there, and it's peaceful and quiet in the back, and there are a lot of birds back there just to sit and watch. And
So
it's go ahead.
a gentleman by the name of Bill Evans comes and stays with us regularly. Bill is well known in the birding community as someone who has been pioneering methods to count birds at night. And Bill has a system in place now. They're listening devices placed on a roof, and they go down to a computer with a cord, a mic cord, and they listen to birds migrating, because the songbird migrants go at night. And as the technology is improving, we can actually identify the type of the species and the number of migrants. And this is very, very useful information. So Bill has got about 12 listening posts in the valley, all of them on schools except for one, and that's on our hotel, and it's on the apartments, the garden suites across the street, just above where you like staying. And Bill comes here in the spring and the fall and sets up the system, and they're making amazing progress with listening to birds, identifying them, and counting them at night,
That
the
is
songbirds.
fantastic. That is fantastic. I'm getting, the technology is changing so rapidly in so many areas, in
Amazing.
so many ways. I was talking to somebody recently that does recordings of owls, and they are able now to identify individual owls. So it's not just that they can hear great horned owls at night. They study the is it a sonogram? Is that the sound wave that
Yeah.
yeah, they study the sonograms and they can now identify them individually. And so if they listen to it again the next night, they can compare the sonograms and say, oh no, that was the Keith owl, not the Scott owl. And so it's not just by species, it's by individual bird. I mean, the technology, they're not going to need birders for very much longer, with webcams and
Right.
sonograms and terrific photography. You and I are going to be outdated.
Yeah. Well, the sonograms are all done on the computer now. That there's a program that handles all of that, and I guess with AI, the human intervention will be minimal.
Yeah, it truly is amazing the amount of information we can get. Although in the end, I have to tell you, and you know this, it's just about seeing the birds.
Mm-hmm.
I just got back a couple days ago. I was up in the Pacific Northwest for 2 weeks and working on my next book, which is both birds and mammals. And
Mm-hmm.
I was up in the Samish Flats, up in Fur Island area of Northwest Washington, and there's a little spot there
Wow.
that's very well known for short-eared owls in the winter. It's it's
Wow.
it's these huge open farmlands, and then there's this one little corner where every year a half dozen or so short-eareds come back and hang out. And I went there and I was among a number of photographers and birders and just casual passerbyers. But you're looking out over this vast, flat farmlands. And then there's this block of 50 to 100 cars. But just, Keith, I could have sat there for days and watched these short eared owls. I watched them mob bald eagles. I watched them do battle with each other and with northern harriers. As you know, shorties and harriers hunt at the same time for the same prey on the same area. So they're always battling. And when I came back, I did some research, and I did not know this. I did not know that I was trying to find out why short-eared owls would mob bald eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like a life expectancy shortener for me. Um, it's not that they're going after the same prey. The bald eagles really aren't going after the small voles. But as it
No.
turns out, it's the bald eagles as they fly across the fields, they scare the hell out of all the prey and they all go
Oh,
into
okay.
hiding. And it's a limited amount of time that the short-eareds get to hunt, right? They just hunt at dusk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if the bald eagles scare everybody away for 20 minutes, they've lost a third or a quarter of their hunting time. So they try to get them out
Wow.
of there. And I got to witness that. I watched a short-eared owl. I mean, we've all seen crows mob everybody and mixed flocks mob everybody.
Yeah.
But to watch a short-eared owl mob a bald eagle, no amount of technology can replace that.
No.
They just they just can't do it. But so let's talk about the Netflix documentary Birders. That's how I was introduced to you. I have to believe that's how a number of your guests first met you, uh,
Yes.
and heard about you, and deservedly so. But tell us about that. How did that come about? Is it still available? Can the viewers today watch it?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. We
all
are
right, tell us about it.
we get we always ask people how they found out about us, and that's an important way that people discover that we're here. It was very interesting. I got a call some years ago, just out of the blue, from a young lady, and she said, "Hey, I want to come and talk to you." And of course, I said, "What do you want to talk about?" Oh, about shooting, um, making a documentary on birds and the border. So I said, "Well, what do you have in mind?" She said, "Nothing. I know nothing about it. I need someone to help me." And I said, "Well, okay." And we arranged a time to meet. And then she put some a tape recorder in the middle of the table and says, "Do you mind if I record this?" And I said, "Well, I guess not." I said, "Who's providing the license fee? Who's financing this?" And she said, "Well, that's confidential." Now, we're right on the border. There's swarms of FBI and federal agents, and they have been for decades here. We're trying to keep the cartels out of the U.S., and this is one area where they could funnel their business and their culture in. And what's going through my mind is, wow, are the cartels getting into birding? That's a little scary. But she said, "Don't worry." Uh, I said, "So where are you from?" She said, "Well, Mexico City." I said, "Oh." Uh, she said, "Don't worry, it's a legitimate organization that's paying for this. You don't have to worry." So I put my fears aside, and we talked for about 3 hours. And I outlined a concept. I said, if I was doing this, here's what I would do. And we talked about the Texas border region, and we talked about Mexico. We talked about land migrants that funnel through Veracruz. We talked about people. I gave her a bunch of names of people to talk to, and I said, "Do you want phone numbers?" "Oh, no, we can get that." Well, my fears were not well rested at that point, but I just took a risk. And she said, "Thank you very much," and she left. A year later, I got a phone call from her, and she said, "We're back in town. We're ready to shoot." And they come with a whole crew, like there were 8 people. These days you see typically people who shoot video, it's one person or 2 people. They had a crew of 8. Old style movie cameras on the shoulder, video cameras on the shoulder, lots of mics everywhere, mics on booms, and they came to the inn and they talked to me for about hour and a half, and there's about 30 seconds in the documentary at the end. But they were very kind. They did what they said. I'm in the credits. The inn got a good. They got some visuals of the end, good mention, and it's been phenomenal for us. So the documentary is called Birders, 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 and it's a phenomenal documentary, very well made by this very professional company out of Mexico City, and the people providing the license fee were Netflix, and so it's on Netflix. Unfortunately, they haven't followed up with birders. They haven't made any more documentaries like that. But this one is brilliant. It lasts an hour, and if you haven't seen it, you will love it. It's a good introduction to the valley, and it really has the feel of what it's like to bird here.
Well, I'll tell you, I loved it. I watched it right when I started my birding career, which is only 6 years now, and absolutely loved it. And that is how I found you. And I'm so grateful and thankful that I have, by the way.
Good.
I want to share this, and I hope I'm not telling tales out of school, and then we'll talk about some other stuff. But the very first time that I went down and stayed with Keith, he was so gracious and kind, and it's a small thing, but I think small things are important. He had some bottled waters on the counter, and I was getting ready to go out. And I said, "Oh, how much are these? I want to grab a handful before I go." He goes, "Oh my goodness, no, those are for my guests." And I just thought that was so sweet and so kind. And to your point about taking care of people, and I'm not this next story. I hope you don't mind that I tell, but I was coming in one night, and I was coming in late, and the plane was delayed, and so I knew the rent-a-car place was going to be a hassle, and I didn't want. Anyway, I called Keith to tell him what was going on, and again, he's a small innkeeper. He's not a 24-hour a day. He's got other things to do in his life, and Keith said, Don't worry about a thing. Here's my number at home. You call me when you land and I'll come pick you up and get you to the inn. And it worked out otherwise that I didn't need to do that. But I still remember that, Keith. And I think it was so
Hmm.
gracious and so kind. And honestly, I think it speaks to the way that you run the inn. And I'm just, I cannot compliment you enough on what you do and the way in which you do it. Now you've got a store there. Tell us about the store and the scorecard, the grease board where you keep track of what's coming on. So tell
Yeah.
people what that's like.
Well, birders love T-shirts and hats, so our store's got plenty of those. We used to sell lots and lots of books. We still offer books for sale, but the volume we sell is a lot lower now. That's just technology. You can get your field guide on your phone, and it's far more efficient and easier to work with. So we still got books there, but we don't sell as many. We've got other things that birders like. We're always looking for things that they like and things to take home for the grandkids or the kids. Uh, the store is just a part of the experience, and it's in the dining room, off the dining room. So when you're eating breakfast, you can look at the store and browse, and it's self-serve. You can take whatever you want, and you just let us know. We put it on your bill, or you leave some cash for it.
And I got to
Store,
tell you again, I have to stop you. I love that. Having taken advantage of that a number of times myself, I just love the idea of somebody trusting their clients or guests or visitors, however you want to define them. That if you grab a yogurt, that you'll leave a couple of bucks for the yogurt, or notify you next time you see you. It just all adds to the experience, and it just makes for an amazing experience. And I want to throw out, because I think this is important. I do plan on somewhere down the road this year having a gentleman named Tony Batiste. Do you know Tony?
no.
To- Tony runs a bed and breakfast. It only has 2 rooms, and he's got an
Oh,
alpaca.
in Southeast Arizona?
Yes, yes.
Right,
But
right. Yeah, I
you,
know of him.
you, you and Tony are cut from the same cloth, and first of all, both of you married up, and so that is
Yeah,
that
for
is a
sure.
positive thing. But both of you were gracious. You have a 99% birding clientele, and cater to that. Both of you bird. Tony came to birding late in life as well, and those are the little spots to me that make birding such a spectacular hobby, is to find people
Uh-huh.
around the country that you look forward to seeing as much as you do the birds. You know,
Yeah,
the times that I've been down to see, I mean, I was telling my son who produces this show, Justin and I were down, I don't remember, about October, November to see you.
yeah.
Uh, we were there for something else. To tell you how much I enjoy Keith's company, my son and I drove 3.5 hours each way to see Keith for lunch, and then turned around and came back. We didn't have time to stay, but we had an hour where we could see him at that little Mexican restaurant across the street from you that's so tasty.
Yes, El Dorado, and
There
that
you
was
go.
amazing. I couldn't believe. I thought you must have an ulterior motive
No,
to drive that far just for lunch.
nope,
Incredible, and
just
it was
wanted to.
great lunch.
Yeah, it was terrific lunch. Just wanted to say hi and got to meet your wife, which was fantastic. But my son wanted me to tell you hello because he so enjoyed the time that we spent together. And these are the
Justin,
yeah.
Justin is great, great
Oh, well,
guy.
that's very
We
kind
love
of you.
him.
Thank you. And we will certainly be back. It is and, but those are the things that make this world, this birding world, so tremendous and so valuable. I imagine it extends to many hobbies where you have enthusiasts, that the people within that network are great people and welcoming and open-armed, and it just makes it all easier. I mean, the first couple times I went down there, I had trouble telling birds from squirrels. It was brand new to me, and Keith pretended that that was normal and was kind and gracious, and you hooked me up with a guide. Now that's one of the things you do. You know a lot of the guides in the area, right?
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, there's not enough guides in the area. And so when there's not enough of something, the price goes up. It's getting expensive to have guides, but there's other ways of seeing the birds. You don't have to have a guide, but it's always nice and it's always helpful. And we can hook people up with guides. We've During COVID, we lost a lot of business. In fact, we spent 6 weeks just doing cancellations, because most people who come here make advance reservations up to
Right.
14 months ahead. Um, and we had a guide on staff at that time. We don't anymore, but we just wondered, what should we do? How can we fill our time? How can we didn't let anyone go. We kept all the staff on. What should we have the guide do? And we decided to have her go out and video birds and the area. And we started a website called birdersontheroad.com. And it's our view of the valley and valley birding of Texas. We've got Michigan, Southeast Arizona, and then we employ other guides. So we've got Central America, South America, some on Africa, some on Europe. It's a great site. We carry Scott's podcast there. We're going to
Very kind.
shortly. You're welcome. Wouldn't miss it. And I've seen every one of your podcasts. As I said, they're just incredible. Really
Thank you so much.
mind opening. We're going to start a podcast just on birding and people who are not well known, but are having a big influence on birding. And check that out. It's free, or you can pay a subscription if you want to. birdersontheroad.com.
Yeah, please check that out. I'll throw the URL up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. It is well worth watching, not just because it carries Naturally Scott, but overall it's spectacular. Keith, what do people do when they're not birding down there, when you have guests? I mean, I know that most of us that go on birding trips are pretty much dawn to dusk birding, but if we do take a little bit of a break from that, what does the area have to offer?
Areas are pretty incredible. Firstly, it's a small area, 40 miles by 140 miles. It's a floodplain, the floodplain of the Rio Grande, that no longer floods because we've dammed it and used all the water. But it's the fifth largest river in the country. It arises in Colorado, flows all the way down to the Gulf here. So the floodplain has had a long history. Whooping cranes used to winter on the floodplain down here. They don't anymore. They winter in Aransas Pass, where they also used to winter. But the floodplain is geographically, as I mentioned, a semi-desert, but it's tropical, a tropical semi-desert. So we get a lot of tropical birds up here. So the birding is phenomenal. So you're right, people spend a lot of their time birding, but we've discovered that most birders are interested in other things: the flora, the fauna, the mammals, the lizards, the snakes, and the people, the culture of the people, the food. So we're 90% Hispanic here, and we've got a lot of influence from Mexico. Most of our population is from Mexico originally, maybe 20 generations back, when this was a part of Mexico, or they may be very recent, just come over in the last few years. And so we've got true Mexican food, we've got Tex-Mex, we've got American food. It's a fusion of all these things. And birders are active people. They need food and they love their food. And so exploring the restaurants is a big deal. There's phenomenal museums, there's art galleries, and it's all got this cultural milieu of Mexico and Texas. And it's a phenomenal place to explore. The valley has three segments to it. So there's the coastal segment, South Padre Island. Everyone's heard of South Padre Island, but it's a great place to bird. But it's also fun to go there and visit. And then the middle of the valley is where we're located, and it's the best general birding that's unique to this area, the specialties. And then west of us, up to Falcon Dam, there's more. It's more semi-desert, and you get more of the desert birds. Lots of roadrunners, for example. Everyone wants to see a roadrunner if they haven't. That's what the Europeans like to see, and some of the other desert birds, Pyrrhuloxia and things like that. Red-billed pigeons, wild Muscovy ducks. So I keep coming back to the birds because that's the central interest, but there's all these things around it. And right across the street from us is El Dorado restaurant. They have Tex-Mex and Mexican food and American. And down near one of the birding spots is Rio Grande. There's a place called Nana's, and that's more like true Mexican food, although some Tex-Mex has crept in there. And meeting the people, most of the people speak English, but they also speak Spanish. And most of the people love their culture and their family life, and it's a phenomenal place to visit.
Okay, well, fantastic. Now, I'm a really perceptive guy, and so I believe it's fair for me to say that you are not Mexican.
Yeah.
You came here from Africa, South Africa?
Yeah, South Africa is where I was raised, and phenomenal birds in Southern Africa. You know, America's got probably about 900 regular species. Southern Africa's got about 1,000, very comparable, but the birds are different. North America was in the Ice Age till, what, 10,000 years ago. So there's a lot of development change in the birds. A lot of evolution has been taking place in them. In Africa, it's the most stable continent. It's been consistently climate-wise stable for most of it for just tens of thousands of years. So the birds there have evolved over a much longer period. So there's some remarkable differences. The birds there tend to be very colorful, very unique songs. They tend to be big and bold. And I came to North America, and it was a battle to learn the local birds because I was used to birds that were simpler to learn. But I grew up in a grassland, on a farm in grassland, a grassland area that's now covered by sugarcane, which is a story of the world. But the farm, we had a lot of fruit trees. My mother market gardened vegetables and flowers for the florists. It was just an oasis for birds, and we grew up with amazing birds all around us. The moment you walked outside, it was just birds singing and birds eating fruit and birds nesting and doing what they do. It was just an incredible place to grow up.
Do you go back?
Yeah, we do. We do. Africa, like the valley here, like so many parts of the world, is changing. Humans are changing the world. So humans and the culture of humans is where we need to go to conserve our birds and all of nature. If the world's a network, humans are at the center and pulling the most strings and having the most effect on the world. And birds are right alongside humans. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. They probably live in a lot more areas of the world than humans regularly live in. And I think birds are alongside humans. Many of the species are adapting to humans. We've seen this right in the valley here. A lot of species that were lived in the reserves and in very rural areas. As the valley has become urbanized, we've now got, when I was here in 1967 as an exchange student, and we were about a population about 90,000 in the valley, and we're at 1.5 million today. And on the other side of the river in Mexico, there's 2.5 million. So it's becoming a highly urban environment, not a collection of vegetable farms like it used to be. And so what we're seeing is birds adjusting to humans and to urban living. Now, they can't all adjust. Some are adjusting and some are not. And
which are the ones that are most successful in the adjustments?
It's interesting. We have at Quinta Mazatlan, which is a birding hotspot in Hackland. It's run by the city, and they have an urban ecologist, John Brush, and he's studying that. And we just see around us birds have adjusted well. So one of them is a Muscovy duck. If you've got water, you've got Muscovy ducks. They're no longer wild, a lot of them aren't, and they become feral, and they look different. But they're adjusting. Another is black-bellied whistling ducks, which have expanded their range breeding range right into Oklahoma and right across the south. Some birds have difficulty adjusting. Chachalakas and green jays have difficulty, but the clay-colored robin in the late 90s was a rarity here. It was considered uncommon or rare, and you'd have to go to a rural cemetery to find one, and they've taken up urban living, and they're in all the urban gardens, and they nest right across the urban areas now.
I'm surprised you would say the green jays are struggling. Do you think of corvids as usually being able to overcome almost any obstacle? What do you think is causing them to struggle?
They're struggling with becoming urbanized.
Okay.
Their survival is not at risk at all because they've expanded their strategy. They like quiet rural areas with thick brush, and humanity clears out the brush, clears out the dead trees, clears out everything. There's no ground cover in gardens. And very few gardens have ground cover, and a lot of birds need that. So the green jay and the chachalaka, for that matter, just the urban gardens are not suitable for them.
Okay.
But the green jay is very adaptable, and they're expanding their range throughout the ranch country. So ranches typically now have, for a long time, they've had water. The valley used to be surrounded by a desert. It was called the Wild Horse Desert, and the king bought that up for pennies on the dollar because it was worthless. He put in wells, and that changed the whole thing. And you drive now from the valley to Corpus Christi through the King Ranch, and it's all full of trees. And so the green jays have moved into areas like that that's become suitable for them.
All right.
Parrots from Mexico started moving in here with the people after 1900 as this area got settled. And we've got red-crowned parrots, possibly more here than in Mexico now, and green parakeets, huge flocks of them.
And they're fun to see. I look for them every time.
Oh, yeah.
Keith, I cannot believe we've already chewed up an hour. This has been an absolute pleasure, as it always is to talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
I'm going to throw my email up here. If you're listening and not watching, It's scott@naturallyscott.com. Any questions you have, any follow-ups to this, send them to me. If you've got questions for Keith, send them to me, and I'll be happy to get them to him. Keith, before I let you go, and it's painful to do so, but before I let you go, I had asked if you would recommend a book to the audience, something you think they would enjoy and maybe benefit by. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Scott. This is a book that I'm recommending. Let's get it in view. It's by an ornithologist, but don't let that put you off. It's called The Nesting Birds of a Tropical Frontier by Tim Brush. He's retired now, but he was an ornithologist at the local university for many years. It's about the lower Rio Grande Valley of Texas, and it's more than just the nesting birds of a tropical frontier. He really describes the valley well. It is out of print, but you can still find it on Amazon and probably Books and other places that deal with out-of-print books. It's just an excellent introduction. There's a chapter on habitats and birds of the valley, and it gives you a really good introduction to this area.
Well,
so,
fantastic.
That's
I
it.
will look forward. And I imagine I might be able to thumb through a copy next time I visit, right?
Yeah, I'll give you one.
There you go. There you go. Hey, I appreciate everybody who's taken the time to listen and watch. I hope you've been as fascinated with my conversation with Keith as I have been. And I will tell you that all conversations with Keith are this fascinating. So if you get a chance to head down to Alamo, make sure that you visit. If you are watching on YouTube, do me a favor, reach over and hit subscribe. There's no cost to it. There's nothing there. It's just every time you do that, YouTube pushes our podcasts out to more people. And the more people that see it, I think the better it is for the world, not because it's my podcast, but because of the fascinating guests that I have. And then the more guests we're able to bring back on board. Keith, it has been an honor and privilege to have you on board today. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're feeling better. And please tell your lovely bride that Justin and I say hello, and we look forward to seeing both of you very soon. And as I wrap up every show, I do the same thing. I recommend to our guests, get outside, back porch, backyard, local patch, or head on down to Alamo and see the spectacular 560 birds that are out there. But when you're doing that, make sure that you stay safe and stay curious. Keith, thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
You've been listening to Naturally Scott with Scott Harris. Naturally Scott is hosted by Scott Harris, produced by Justin Harris, and edited by Frank Sierra. Follow us on our YouTube channel at Naturally Scott and Instagram at Naturally Scott Harris. If this conversation resonated with you, please follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Naturally, Scott thanks you for viewing and listening to this podcast.